Do you ever wonder, what in the world was it thinking when you hear about a ghost haunting someone? Well, now you can find out. In Ghost Stories The Flip Side, Fiona Fabblestabble, ghost and ghost representative, tells the ghost stories from the side of the ghosts. So sit back and get ready for the real story. The Flip Side.
Hi, I'm Fiona Fabblestabble, and I'm a ghost, also a ghost representative. I'm going to tell you the ghost side of the story. So today's story comes to us through the ghost grapevine from Minnesota, which is very appropriate because it's about a lake, and Minnesota is the land of 10,000 lakes. Here goes. Hank and his younger brother Jordy were excited to be spending the month of July with their cousins Mark and Sean at their Aunt Elsie and Uncle Frank's house in Minnesota. This was the first time they'd been allowed to go. When Jordy and Hank arrived at the house, they were shown to their room and then told to put on their swimming clothes. It was time to hit the lake. The house had a large lawn in back that sloped down to a private, sparkling blue lake that had a dock about 20 yards out with a boat moored on the side. The lake could be cold, but was still good for swimming in. And the best thing was they had it all to themselves. Mark and Sean dove right in and swam out to the dock. Jordy dipped his toe into the water and pulled it out quickly. "It's pretty cold," he said. "Come on," Sean yelled from the dock. "You'll get used to it. Just wade in. Once it's over your shoulders, it feels just fine." Hank waded in up to his waist and dove in and started swimming for the dock. He looked back and waved at his little brother Jordy to follow him. Jordy waded in slowly, shivering a bit, but he finally took the plunge and started swimming for the dock. He realized they were right. It wasn't so bad once you got used to it. They played all afternoon, doing cannonballs and diving off the dock, then ran back up for lunch, ate lunch, cleaned up. After that, they played frisbee on the lawn for a while they digested their lunch, and then they went back to the lake, and they spent the afternoon playing in the water before heading back for dinner. It was like a dream vacation. After dinner, when it started to get dark, Uncle Frank lit a fire in the fire pit on the patio, and they all gathered around to roast marshmallows and tell ghost stories. "It's my turn," Sean said. "This is about the girl in the lake. This is a true story. It's been handed down in our family for years. We've owned this property a long time, and it takes place in this lake right here. And Jordy—" "Hey, that's enough, Sean," Annalise said. "We don't need to hear that story. The story was made up to scare kids from going into the lake after dark. Don't worry, boys. As long as you stay away from the lake at night, you'll be safe." She glared at Sean. They told other ghost stories and finally went to bed. The next day was sunny and warm, and the four boys headed to the lake after breakfast. They swam to the dock, then they piled into the boat and headed for the deep section of the lake. Sean dropped anchor and said, "I think this is where the ghost is." He laughed when he saw Jordy turn pale. "Just kidding. Hey, Jordy, you're the first one out." He pushed Jordy into the water, then did a cannonball next to him. Hank and Mark soon followed, and they all played in the water. Sean pushed Jordy under hard, and he went down a little too far. The water got really cold, and he felt something brush his foot, and that was freezing where it touched him. He shot up out of the water, sputtering. His brother Hank grabbed his arm and helped him into the boat. "That's enough," Hank told Sean. There's a really cold spot down there," Jordy said. "Oh, yeah? Where?" Sean said. Jordy pointed to the spot. Sean swam over and dived down in. He surfaced, flailing his arms and yelling, "Something's got me!" He started laughing. Then his eyes went wide and he went under again, flailing for real this time. Sean finally freed himself and hightailed it for the boat, where the others were waiting. "I'm freezing!" he yelled as he climbed into the boat. Mark handed him a towel. One look at Sean's face, and Mark powered up the boat and headed for the dock. As they were tying the boat to the dock, he asked Sean, "What happened?" "Something got tangled in my legs and tried to pull me down. I thought it was algae at first, but it didn't act like algae. Maybe a big fish or a water snake," Sean said. "I don't know why it was so cold." The next morning, undeterred by the previous day's experience, the four boys went into the lake again. They splashed and played until lunch. After lunch, they laid down on lawn chairs in the yard to rest, and they all fell asleep. When they woke, it was late afternoon. They decided to have one last dip in the lake before dark, even though they weren't supposed to go out on the lake that late in the day. But they were on their own that night, as Annalise and Uncle Frank had gone out to dinner with friends, so they decided it wouldn't hurt to break that rule just this once. Geordie noticed that Sean seemed content with staying close to the dock and didn't mention going into the deep part of the lake. Dusk settled a little earlier than they expected, though, and as the daylight was fading, Geordie decided to swim back to the dock, when suddenly the water around him turned stone cold and something grabbed his leg. It was freezing where it touched him. He shouted as it tugged on his leg, pulling him deeper into the water. It was getting colder, too. He looked around for Sean, thinking it was another trick, but Sean and Mark were on the dock. His brother Hank noticed something was wrong, so he swam over and pulled on Geordie's arm, dragging him toward the dock and just barely keeping his head above water as the unknown force tried to pull Geordie down. Whatever was holding Geordie's leg finally let go. He pulled himself up onto the dock, shivering, with his brother's help. "What happened?" Mark and Sean asked together. "Something grabbed my leg and tried to pull me under. If Hank hadn't pulled me up, it would have got me." They didn't laugh like he thought they might. Darkness was falling quickly now, and the only light was from the brightness of the full moon. "Okay, let's head in," Sean said. "Everyone stick close together while we swim to shore." Mark was the first one off the dock, and as he jumped into the water, the others all saw something white just under the surface. The white thing wrapped its arms around Mark's waist and hugged his legs close. Sean and Hank jumped into the water, and Sean fought off the creature while Hank pulled Mark back onto the dock, then helped Sean back up. They all came up freezing cold and shivering. Sean was the first one to speak. "My dad says we shouldn't drive the boat up to the shore. It's supposed to stay at the dock or be used further out, but I think we should get into it and drive it back up to the shore anyway. I'll explain to my dad what happened." The boys wasted no time scrambling into the boat, untying it from the dock and heading for shore. They got the boat as close as they could to the lake's edge. As they climbed out into the shallow water and scrambled onto the shore, they heard something behind them. They turned to see a figure in the light of the moon. A girl, pale white, in a soggy white dress, a party dress, with algae in her hair. She was coming halfway out of the lake, digging her fingers into the grass on the shore and slowly pulling herself up the bank after them. The boys ran as fast as they possibly could up to the house. Once inside, Sean locked the doors and he turned on the floodlights that shone on the backyard. But there was nothing there. The boys spent that night safe inside the house, warming up and talking about what had happened. And by morning, they had convinced themselves that it was all in their imagination, brought on by the ghost stories by the campfire. They decided to prove to themselves that nothing had really happened. So in the morning, they walked to the spot on the shore where they thought they had seen the girl dragging herself out of the water. There, in the grass, were deep gouge marks, 2 sets of 5 each, like 10 fingers had dug deep into the ground. Where the marks ended, they noticed the grass was tamped down like something had slithered or crawled across it. They carefully and slowly followed the slither marks into a stand of trees where they found the remnants of a white party dress. It was covered with stains that were algae-colored and full of holes with a few fish scales on it like it had been in the lake and wet a long time. But now it was finally dry. None of them ever went back to that spot again. Dry at last! Okay, I have Carmen here with me, and she's going to explain what really happened. Well, hi, Fiona. First, it is true that I dragged people into the lake, but I really didn't mean to. I was just trying to get out. And none of them died. That's not true. They got away, so saying that I killed people is wrong. None of them died. Anyway, I didn't want to have to torment those boys. It was kind of fun. was kind of fun, but I didn't really mean to scare them. But it was the only way I was going to get out of that lake. I mean, I was stuck in that lake for a long time. And I was really sick of everything being so soggy, including me. I mean, my hair. It was awful. So I didn't really want to torment the boys, but I needed their energy. And the only way to get it was to touch them. I'm a little bit sorry it made them so cold when I sucked their energy out. But not really. No. I accidentally pulled a few people in before over the years, so of course I got a bad reputation. But those people got away too soon. I mean, before I could get enough energy to get myself out of the lake, so it didn't turn out too well. So, when I saw 4 boys together, teasing each other and acting like, like boys, I thought, now's my chance. Sorry, but not sorry. Plus, the moon was full. Once I touched Jordy, my energy surged. I was able to grab onto Sean when he jumped in. I mean, after that, my energy just grew and grew as those silly boys jumped into the water and I was able to grab onto him. And Sean didn't even believe his own ghost story. And they didn't even notice the full moon. Anyway, I got enough energy from them and from the full moon that I was finally, after years and years of wishing and waiting, able to get out of that horrid lake. I couldn't really walk, so I dragged myself over to the trees and laid down, finally able to rest without a fish swimming through my ears. My poor waterlogged body dried out and sank into the earth. And for some reason, somehow it left the dress behind, which, hey, I was so sick of that dress. I'm so glad to be rid of it. Although I don't really like hanging around here in my underwear. The other ghosts all make fun of me, that and my hair. But you should see them. They don't look so good either. So did I scare those boys? Did I freeze them? Yeah, but come on. I mean, the livings always think it's all about them. It's not. So my advice to the livings, if you can't swim, don't go in the deep water. Well, thank you, Carmen. That was very, very interesting. I'm Fiona Fabblestabble, Ghost and Ghost Rat. This has been Ghost Stories The Flip Side. We'll see you next time.
This has been Ghost Stories The Flip Side. The ghosts thank you for listening and wish you a long and happy life.